All right, we're going to finish up Chapter 1. In this section, 1.3, we're going to be talking about the periodic table. The periodic table consists of all the known elements. And we talked about earlier that elements are pure substances. Okay, an element is made up of only one type of atom. Now, they're organized on the periodic table by their properties, their chemical properties. And specifically, they're organized by the number of protons that they have. Now, each square on the periodic table shows the name and letter symbol for each element. Usually the symbol will relate to the English name, but some come from the older names. They're usually the Latin names. So some of them make sense, like hydrogen is H, helium is He, but some of them kind of are a little bit different, like gold is Au, it's Arium. Now, that's a little bit different than what we would think gold would be, so some of them are a little bit tricky. Now, the periodic table is broken up into groups and periods. Groups are also called the families. These are the vertical columns. Vertical means that it's going up and down. Okay, they're numbered 1 through 18. They're on the top of the periodic table. And in these columns, or in these groups, we see that they all have the same types of chemical properties. They'll react the same way. Now, periods are the horizontal rows, meaning they go right to left. And their properties change consistently across the period, and they're numbered 1 through 7. Now, we see this periodic table, and we see that not only does it have the numbers at the top, 1 through 18, but on the bottom we see 1A, 2A, 3B, 4B, 5B, 6B, 7B, and so on. The periodic table that we use is the IUPAC version, and it only has the 1 through 18 numbering on it. And as we see that this little portion down at the bottom, our lanthanide and actinide series, what we've kind of done is pulled those guys out. In the two rows we just said, they're lanthanide and actinide, and the reason why we pulled them out is just to keep the periodic table a little bit smaller, keep it manageable up on the wall. We don't use the lanthanide and actinide series very much in our class, but they are on the bottom, and if they were put into the periodic table where they should go, they would take up a lot more space on the wall. Now, there are 3 types of elements that we're going to be talking about today. The first, which comprise the majority of the periodic table, are metals. Those are elements that are very good conductors for electricity. Normally, at room temperature, they are solid, very malleable, very ductile, and very high tensile strengths. Now, they'll also, in their appearance, they'll have this silvery or grayish white luster. They look metallic, okay, because they're metals. Now, those metals make up the majority of the periodic table. And if we can see at the very top of this little periodic table, everything is basically to the left of the periodic table. All those purple squares, those are the metals. The next type of element we're going to talk about is a metalloid. Now, it's an element that has some characteristics of a metal and a non-metal. They appear along the staircase line. So if you look here, and our staircase line is right there, they appear right through there. All are solids at room temperature, but they are very less malleable than metals, but less brittle than non-metals. And they're semiconductors. So they kind of really don't know what to be. They're not metals, they're not non-metals. They're kind of this middle stage. And lastly, the last type of element that we have are the nonmetals. Now, nonmetals is an element that is a very poor conductor of heat and electricity. Many are gases at room temperature, and some are solid and usually brittle and definitely not malleable. Now, if we look and remember back what a metal was, a nonmetal is basically the opposite of that. Okay, we see that a metal is a very good conductor of electricity. So, a nonmetal is not. Okay, all of our metals, or many of our metals, they're solid at room temperature. A lot of our nonmetals are gases. Okay, so everything that a metal is, a non-metal isn't. Now, one group that we are going to talk about now is the noble gases. Now, the noble gases are in group 18, the very far right column of the periodic table. And what makes these gases special is that those gases are unreactive. They don't like anybody else. They don't want to mess with anybody else. They want to be by themselves.